Yep. Magnus is back. I don't think he's going to let this one slip.
So the commentary team had all but written off Alireza Firouzja in this bullet chess game against Magnus Carlsen. But then Alireza finds a move. Wait for this one. Now this is game 2 of their winners bracket semi-final played back in July, cracking match, and even in this time control we can learn a lot from these great players as we're gonna see. So Alireza goes e4 and Magnus plays the Caro-Kann, one of Alireza's favourites. We get d4, Magnus also strikes in the centre, and Alireza goes for this advanced variation. Now we get c5, Magnus immediately striking at that centre, and he actually gives a pawn now, as we'll see. Alireza accepts, he is a pawn up, and it's really instructive how Magnus doesn't rush to win back this pawn. So he first pins that knight. Now we get a3, preparing b4 to cement the c5 pawn. We get e6 played. This is a big reason why this bishop comes outside the pawn chain in the Caro-Kann. It's a superior square to the French defense bishop. And after b4 supporting that pawn, we don't see knight takes on e5. You basically lose too much time as black if you go for this. White gets an initiative. You're actually best off doing what Magnus does here, carrying on developing. So we get bishop b2 and g6. Very harmonious. The bishop coming that way, given it's so dead in this direction. Whoops, misfire. Now we see this knight coming to d2. We get bishop g7 and h3, putting a question to that annoying bishop. And very naturally, it chops off that knight. If you start retreating, you're going to start getting trapped very quickly. So knight takes back. We see castles, bishop d3. And now pawn a5, this is awesome from Magnus. He understands that he needs to soften up these pawns. Now we see b5 played, which weakens the c5 pawn. And so it begs the question, could Alireza have connected this pawn chain for longer, kept it together? So what if you go c3? Very natural idea. Well, now this pawn drops because the bishop no longer defends. So you can play knight takes on e5. So what if you then go queen d2 to defend it like this? Well, now there's queen c7 attacking this pawn, and that one's about to drop. And you're not yet castled, so there's no rook e1. So an interesting moment. b5 played, drives back this knight. You couldn't keep the chain connected. Now bishop d4, white's position still pleasant. We get knight d7, and this is Magnus's point. He now targets both of these pawns. We get queen d2, rook c8, queen e3, covers that pawn, but queen c7 attacks it now for a third time, and you just can't hold on to it. So we see castles and it drops off the board. Magnus finally has his pawn back and big pressure down the c-file. g4 from Alireza looks very aggressive, but there's a real positional point to this. You take control of f5, the knight can no longer hop there, and therefore look how dead that pony's looking when this square is taken. Even if you go knight c8, b6 one day, it's still not going to be the most amazing knight. So we see knight takes on d3 now. Pawn takes forced, because otherwise this would crash through and win a pawn. We now see queen d7 targeting b5, a4 defends, and Magnus invades with his rooks. So Alireza challenges the file. Very natural. This rook comes across to support. We see this mass exchange now. Alireza doesn't want Magnus winning the file, but queen c7 forces the issue. We get takes, queen takes. Magnus has won that file. This pawn is attacked. Now, what's the best way for Alireza to generate counterplay here? Well, it's with bishop c5. I'm going to show you this quickly, actually. Bishop c5 hitting this knight. And because that's such a bad piece, the best move here that the computer finds is d4. I find this really instructive from a positional point of view. The whole idea is you then clear this square, the knight hops and lands. Yes, you've given a pawn, but look how dangerous this knight could become. The d file blocked. You own the c file. This is weak. This is weak. I love this kind of instructive positional chess, even in bullet games. So king g2 played by Alireza. He doesn't find bishop c5. This pawn now drops. Again, bishop c5, top engine move. But Alireza, he goes for something way trickier. And I should say, actually, this is where the commentators had all but written off Alireza. Here's the clip one more time.
Yep. Magnus is back. I don't think he's going to let this one slip.
But what does Alireza play here? Well, queen to g5. Very tricky move because he hits this knight, and there are ideas of knight g5 coming if the queen ever invades and takes it. So Magnus now plays queen b4 to cover that knight, but Alireza finds a very devilishly tricky response. He plays this bishop back to c3, decoying the black queen away from the defense of the knight. Now, if you stay here on the diagonal with the knight, well, the bishop now takes the pawn. This is the problem. And after black recaptures, the knight drops, or say you don't actually cover it, you go bishop f8. Well, now here white's doing fine. You can do this, materials level, h4, h5 could be coming. It's a bit unpleasant for black. So Magnus does take the bishop. This one drops, but now his position is so tough to play because there's two threats in the air. One is queen takes pawn, and the other is knight g5, then threatening queen f7 check and all of that stuff. Now the computer finds the only defense here, which is queen to c8. You cover this pawn, and after knight g5, you can then come across here to cover that one. But hang on, then doesn't white win this pawn? Well, this is the sting at the end of the tail that you have to see, is black can take that pawn on e5, but you're never seeing that deep in bullet. You just write it off once you see your queen go passive, your pawn drops anyway. But because that bishop is so well placed now, covering the b8 square where the pawn wants the queen, black does actually have an equality here, game goes on. But that is tough to see in bullet. So Magnus goes bishop f8, very natural move to kick the queen out of there, but now it captures this one. Again, we say h6 to stop the knight coming to g5, but pawn b6. And this is where we switch to the commentary team now because they can't believe the turnaround that Alireza has just put on the board.
And now b7's gone. That gives white a passer.
Oh, my goodness. Bro. It's about to be a 2-0. Firouzja, relax. You know this is Magnus, right? Like, this is Magnus. I mean, I don't know if you know that. Like, this is Magnus. Carlsen.
It's
Maybe
Magnus
he's winning
Carlsen.
now? There it is.
And as you can see from that clip, after a4, queen c7, Magnus resigned. The game is lost. He just can't do anything about this pawn running through. It's way too fast. Doesn't really matter what he tries, so I won't start clicking through lines. The b pawn is going through way quicker than this one ever is, and then this king is way more in trouble. So a nice instructive game. I love these old Alireza Magnus ones. If you enjoyed that one, do hit subscribe, never miss a future video, and to see another epic game of chess, check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.